I stand alone in a sparse room, the walls almost bare except for a collage of old family photographs that seem to watch me with silent reproach. The images, smiling faces captured in moments of happiness, contrast starkly with the emptiness of the room. I clear my throat softly, as if to dispel the ghosts of rivalry and unspoken resentment that have long dwelt here. "Hello, my name is Madison," I begin, my voice a gentle tremor in the stillness. I speak not merely to announce myself, but to acknowledge the weight of the past that these pictures embody. Each framed smile and captured laughter hides a story, a memory where subtle bias, the sting of cold glances, and choices that left me on the margins take root. Even now, my words linger in that suspended silence, hinting that this portrait of family is as fractured as it is beautiful. I close my eyes for a moment and drift back to a long ago afternoon, a childhood family gathering that seemed, at the time, ordinary. In the vibrant hum of chatter and clinking dishes at a sunlit dining table, I remember the undercurrents that set me apart. While my siblings basked in the warm glow of praise and approval, I floated at the periphery, an indistinct presence. I recall the way Ethan's approving smile would light up the room as he received accolades for small victories, while Olivia's cool, dismissive gaze would often sweep over me without landing on me at all. Their murmured compliments, so eagerly aimed at each other, left me enveloped in a quiet ache. Even in a space meant for celebration, I was rendered invisible, a detail etched within a memory that taught me early on about subtle favoritism and the sting of exclusion. Now, in the hushed solitude of my present, I reopen a worn leather-bound diary, the pages yellowed with time and stained with more than ink. As I turn each page, I am met with a collage of confessions, tender recountings of a childhood filled with secret joys, yet interlaced with recurring notes of rejection. One entry captures a day in the park where laughter was shared by my siblings and the gentle hum of admiration brushed past me like a secret I was never meant to know. Another entry, scrawled in hurried lines during a stormy night, reveals the first time I felt the sharp pang of being sidelined, the moment my voice slowly faded into the background of a conversation not meant for me. With each entry, I trace the gradual assembly of my inner conflict, a blend of fondness for the cherished memories and a bitter awareness of my constant outsider status. Here, in these fragile pages, the duality of love and rejection coalesces, setting the tone for the journey I am about to unfold. This opening chapter establishes not only the character of Madison, but also the profound emotional undercurrents that will drive her story. It introduces us to a woman who is both observant and self-aware, whose past is woven with moments of warmth as well as the pulled shadows of exclusion. As the photographs, flashbacks, and diary entries blend together, we glimpse a life defined by both treasured memories and the longing for acceptance, a poignant portrait of a fractured yet resilient soul. The room was alive with laughter and clinking glasses as I stepped into the bustling parlor of our family's annual celebration. The decorations shimmered under soft lighting, and every corner of the space pulsed with the warmth of reunion. I moved with a hopeful eagerness, ready to contribute my small spark to this vivid tapestry of shared memories. Yet, as the evening unfolded, it became painfully clear that my role was that of a mere backdrop, an extra in a scene where my presence was neither celebrated nor truly acknowledged. As conversations swirled around me, I found myself silently relegated to the margins. Every time I attempted to join in, my words were drowned by louder accolades aimed at my siblings. Their exchanges spoke of inside jokes and accomplishments I was never a part of, leaving me feeling ghostly and unseen. I observed how Ethan's hearty laugh filled the space, and how Olivia's cool admiration was reserved only for those who stood at the center. Despite my quiet persistence and sincere smile, tonight I was just a shadow passing through an event not meant for me. Later that evening, when the party's din had mellowed into the soft hum of departing guests, I found solace in the company of Harper, a dear friend whose empathy and insight have often guided me through life's prickly moments. Over cups of lukewarm tea in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, Harper's gaze held both tenderness and a quiet intensity. "Madison," she began gently, stirring her tea with deliberate care, "this isn't the first time you've been put on the sidelines. I know you're trying so hard to be a part of something that feels like it's slipping away from you." Her voice was both compassionate and firm, as if urging me to see the pattern that had woven itself into our family's fabric for too long. I listened as she unraveled the recurring dance of exclusion, a pattern where the applause and the spotlight orbited my siblings, leaving me to navigate the darkness alone. In her gentle criticism, I recognized an unforgiving truth. My desire to belong was constantly met with barriers erected by unintentional neglect, if not deliberate sidelining. That night, long after the echoes of celebration had faded into distant memory, I sat by a rain-speckled window in my room. The world outside blurred into a canvas of neon reflections and whispered winds, a stark contrast to the clamor I'd endured earlier. In the solitude of these few hours, I allowed my thoughts to meander through the painful recollections of the evening. I replayed every moment, my half-uttered words, the stinging silence, the looks that said I didn't quite belong. Each echo of exclusion resonated deep within me, questioning my worth and my place in a family that once promised unconditional love. I felt the familiar sting of isolation, a bittersweet reminder that the very people who should have celebrated me had instead curated a narrative where I was invisible. In the quiet, the duality of longing and loss converged, leaving me to wonder, was I destined to be forever an observer in the story of my own life? Each pulse in the silence served as a solemn reminder of my inner conflict, a conflict that would fuel my search for identity and acceptance in the chapters yet unwritten. Now firmly rooted in adulthood, I find myself immersed in a world where my worth is defined by my achievements, not by the absence of familial validation. At work, my small apartment office transforms into a creative haven, a desk bathed in the soft morning light, scattered sketches and notes that testify to countless late nights, and the hum of a computer that never sleeps. Today, I proudly presented a campaign proposal that merged daring design with heartfelt storytelling, a project celebrated by colleagues who valued originality and passion. Outside the office walls, my creative pursuits flourished as I curated an art exhibit that challenged conventional norms. In these moments, I firmly established an identity built not upon what I was denied at home, but what I had painstakingly crafted for myself. In the gentle quiet after a long day, I met with Jordan, the mentor whose steady counsel has illuminated my darkest doubts. We sat in a tucked-away corner of an old book cafe, where the aroma of roasted coffee brewed solace as we exchanged thoughts. With trembling honesty, I confessed, "Jordan, I've spent so many years yearning for approval from the very people who should have cherished me. Every achievement feels like a solitary victory because it's never been validated by the family I once trusted." Jordan's eyes, crinkled with empathy, met mine as he replied, "Madison, not all validation comes from those bound by blood. Your strength, your perseverance, they speak volumes. Remember, the greatness that resides in you is independent and undeniable." In that moment of bare vulnerability, my longing for the warmth of familial love collided with the transformative reassurance that my self-worth did not depend on their acceptance. Later that evening, with the palette of twilight painting the skyline, I set out for a reflective walk through the city. The streets buzzed with a vibrant heartbeat, a mosaic of neon signs, impassioned conversations between strangers, and the pulsing drive of city life. As I ambled along bustling sidewalks, I couldn't help but contrast this dynamic, ever-changing scene with the static picture of my past. Memories of once cherished, yet now distant family gatherings mingled with the sounds of distant laughter and the rhythmic cadence of urban hustle. Each step I took was both a retreat from the sorrow of old wounds and an embrace of the future I was determined to create. In that moment, among the constant interplay of shadow and light, I recognized that forging my own path meant drawing strength from both the joy of new achievements and the bittersweet lessons of a past that no longer defined me. This chapter weaves together the themes of professional and personal growth, vulnerability, and the power of self-reliance. As Madison stands on the brink of independence, her journey blossoms into a testament to resilience and the art of carving out a space where she is seen, valued, and celebrated on her own terms. The memory is etched in the silky texture of paper and sealed envelopes, once symbols of hope, now turned into relics of exclusion. One by one, the invitations arrived like delicate promises, an elegant card embossed with my name, each from a sibling's wedding. I remember how my hands trembled as I read Ethan's invitation, the sumptuous script hinting at a celebration that, for a fleeting moment, made me feel a part of something family. And then it came, the abrupt, cold cancellation notice sliding into my mailbox almost as quickly as the invitation had arrived. The same familiar pattern repeated with Olivia's upcoming nuptial celebration. Each planned event, once a potential opportunity for belonging, swiftly transformed into another reminder that I wasn't invited to the center of their world. The envelope's crisp crease, the faded ink of a cancellation note, all whispered the same unyielding truth. I was always the one left on the fringe. In the charged silence of my mind, vivid flashbacks invade the present. I am transported back to tense family dinners and private conversations where only fragments of dialogue remain, laden with prejudice and explicit favoritism. I recall Ethan's barely concealed smirk when discussing his plans with pride, his voice trailing off as soon as my name entered the conversation. Olivia's icy glances, delivered between murmured compliments to others, still echo in the chambers of my heart. In those moments, unspoken words accumulated like a weight, a silent testament to the hierarchy that had long been established. In the privacy of my thoughts, I replay the scene. The barbed comments disguised as casual observations, the subtle shifting of eyes, and the exclusion wrapped in a veneer of polite indifference. With each reiteration, my despair deepened, and I questioned if my very existence had been deemed unworthy of the familial celebration that so many took for granted. One lonely evening, I gathered the fragments of these painful moments, a discarded invitation here, a hastily scrawled note there, and began constructing a scrapbook. As I arranged each piece, the album transformed into a chronicle of rejection. The pages overflowed with items that once promised inclusion. Each envelope, each note became a symbol of past dismissals. I traced my finger along every fragile crease, reading out loud the silent codes of exclusion. In that intimate act of creation, the scrapbook wasn't just a collection of misfortunes. It was a testimony to the years of neglect and a catalyst for transformation. Every artifact was a stark reminder of a rejection imposed not solely by the words on paper, but by the actions and inactions that had defined my familial landscape. In laying these tokens before me, I allowed my raw hurt to meet the light, finding in the process a strange solace. For in acknowledging every slight, I reclaimed the power over my own narrative. In the soft glow of dusk filtering through my apartment window, I sat surrounded by the relics of my past, the scattered mementos of rejection, the faded photographs that once whispered of belonging, and the muted hum of the city outside. It was in this solitude, this tranquil silence, that an unexpected realization began to take shape. As I cradled a worn family photograph in my hands, a thought crystallized, bright and undeniable. Rejection would no longer dictate my worth. With every exhaled breath, I felt a cathartic release, an inner voice rising above the din of past disappointments. That evening, the weight of unacknowledged pain transformed into a resolute conviction. My story would be written on my own terms, with each word a declaration of identity, strength, and freedom. The following afternoon, I found solace in the warm embrace of a familiar friend, Harper, whose quiet strength had always illuminated my darker paths. Over cups of fragrant herbal tea in the corner of a sunlit cafe, I shared the raw heart of my epiphany. "Harper, I've decided that it's time I celebrate the real me," I said, my voice steady and determined. "I'm going to host my own wedding, a day that's woven from my own values, not the legacy of a family that never saw my worth." Harper's eyes softened with both empathy and pride. "That's beautiful, Madison. You're choosing to honor your truth. When you create your own celebration, you set the stage for everyone who's been overlooked to see that your narrative isn't defined by old wounds, but by the promise of what you're building." In that moment, her words did more than soothe. They reaffirmed my commitment to reclaim every piece of my identity and mold it into something undeniably mine. As the day faded into the luminous twilight of another possibility, I returned to my apartment with renewed resolve. Before me stood a large vision board, a blank canvas waiting to be filled with the dreams that had long been buried under layers of neglect and heartache. With a collection of magazines, shimmering stickers, and a vibrant array of colored markers, I began pinning down images and phrases that echoed my newfound freedom. The board soon burst to life with visions of an intimate, radiant celebration of self, a wedding bathed in authenticity, love, and personal triumph. Every photo I attached, every word I scribbled, was a testament to a future defined by choice, not by forced acceptance. In that ritual of crafting, my resolve crystallized. I was no longer an outsider peering into a sheltered past, but the architect of a bold, authentic future, where every decision was mine alone to celebrate. In this chapter, Madison's heartache and past rejections transmute into a beacon for her future. With the quiet strength of her epiphany, the supportive echo of Harper's encouragement, and the vibrant dreams on her vision board, she steps boldly into a narrative she now claims entirely as her own. In the gentle glow of late afternoons and the muted hum of creative energy, I immersed myself in planning meetings that felt more like intimate acts of defiance than mere logistical preparations. Seated at a long, reclaimed wooden table in a sunlit studio, I spread out swatches of fabric, hand-picked floral arrangements, and sketches of inventive decor concepts. I meticulously arranged every element, each detail, from the vintage lace draped over a minimalist table to bold neon accents that celebrated my modern spirit, ensuring the wedding would be a mirror reflecting my true identity. The guest list, too, was curated with care, a handwritten roll of names that included those who had always uplifted me and understood my journey, a deliberate ode to chosen family rather than inherited expectations. Every meeting, every passionate discussion with my trusted planner left me feeling both exhilarated and resolute. This day would belong solely to me. The next step in this transformation demanded a confrontation with the unyielding shadows of my family's past. With a controlled yet tremulous voice, I reached out to extended family members, those who once reveled in the rituals of our gatherings, to share the news that my wedding would be an intimate celebration that, for the first time, intentionally excluded my siblings. As I explained my decision over phone calls and in carefully crafted messages, I sensed the atmosphere shift. In hushed tones over distant phone lines and in the quiet murmurs that began to ripple through our familial networks, I heard reassurances laced with disbelief and judgment. "It's your day, Madison, but why leave out those who are blood?" they asked, their voices a blend of concern and tradition. Despite the murmurs and the prickling of anticipated rumors, I stood firm, choosing authenticity over the comfort of conformity. The tension in those moments was palpable, a reminder that breaking free often comes with its share of painful repercussions. But the act of declaring my choice also felt like a necessary exorcism of old wounds. One particularly crisp afternoon, I wandered into a quaint bridal boutique, its windows artfully decorated with ethereal gowns and glimmering accessories. Amid the soft rustle of delicate fabrics and the muted strains of an ambient melody, my gaze was drawn to a small display tucked in the corner, a vintage necklace with an intricate pendant, gracefully aged yet undeniably regal. Something about its quiet beauty whispered to me, recalling moments of both sorrow and the fierce desire to rise above it. I carefully lifted the piece, feeling the cool metal against my skin, each engraving a silent testament to resilience. The boutique attendant observed my lingering touch and softly said, "That piece seems to choose you, doesn't it? It carries the weight of history, yet it's unmistakably a symbol of rebirth." In that tender, charged moment, I understood that this accessory was not just jewelry. It was a talisman marking my liberation from a past defined by rejection. With it in my hand, the future seemed a canvas yet to be painted entirely on my own terms. In this chapter, the deliberate act of planning transforms into a ritual of liberation. Each detail, every conversation laced with tension, and that singular, poignant discovery in the boutique underscores a central truth. I am reclaiming my narrative by celebrating the essence of who I truly am. On the eve of my wedding, a night meant for anticipation and gentle excitement, my phone suddenly buzzed, shattering the calm with an unexpected call. Staring at the screen, I saw it was Ethan. My heart quickened with a mix of trepidation and weary familiarity as I answered. "Madison?" His voice wavered, caught between regret and defensiveness. There was a hesitance in his tone, a pause that spoke of lingering doubts and unrelenting years of silence. "I know tomorrow is my wedding," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil beneath. "I need to understand, where did we lose each other?" There was a long silence before his words emerged haltingly, tangled in apologies and half-spoken justifications. Regret laced his defense as he attempted to justify his absence with vague references to family obligations and misunderstood intentions. Yet, every word only deepened the chasm between the brother who had once been my closest kin and the remnants of a past riddled with exclusion. The conversation, fragile and laden with shared yet unspoken pain, ended as abruptly as it had begun, leaving me suspended in a bittersweet mixture of sorrow and the quiet empowerment of not bending to his narrative any longer. Later that evening, seeking solace in the tangible warmth of those who truly saw me, I hosted a small gathering in my living room. Gathered around a low coffee table and bathed in the soft glow of amber light, my closest friends formed an informal circle of compassion and candid truth. Harper, always my beacon of gentle wisdom, leaned forward and said, "Madison, your strength is not defined by what you've been denied. Look at you, standing here, refusing to be diminished." Marcus, whose quiet empathy had seen me through many storms, added, "We all carry our scars, but look how beautifully they mark the terrain of who you are. Tonight, we honor every part of you, even the parts that yearn for a family that once was." As we spoke, the tension of familial expectations and past rejections wove through our conversation like a silent thread. Raw, heartfelt words filled the spaces where old wounds ached, each confession serving as both a release and a reaffirmation that my worth was measured not by inherited validation, but by the love and truth in the room. In that intimate gathering, the shared understanding of loss became a catalyst for healing. I realized that while I could not mend the fractures of blood ties, I could build bridges where genuine connection resided. In the ensuing hours of solitude, after the echoes of heartfelt conversations had waned, I retreated to my quiet study. Before me lay a pristine sheet of paper, its blankness both daunting and liberating. With a trembling pen, I began to write a letter addressed to my estranged siblings, a confession of the hurt, the hopes unrealized, and the resolve I had forged from years of rejection. "Dear Ethan and Olivia, I have carried the weight of your absence like an heirloom of disappointment, a relic of every slight and unvoiced dismissal. Though I once yearned for the warmth of your approval, I now see that my worth was never yours to bestow." Each line I penned was an act of release, a purging of memories steeped in neglect and unspoken accusations. With every word, I wove together fragments of my pain and aspirations, acknowledging the beauty that had grown from the desolation. This letter, destined never to leave the confines of my drawer, was a declaration of independence. It affirmed my direction, a future defined not by the scars of the past, but by the steadfast belief in the power of self-worth. In that solitary moment of reflection, I reclaimed my narrative, embracing a tomorrow written entirely in my own hand. As this chapter closes, the confrontation with familial ghosts and the catharsis found among true allies set the stage for a future where Madison's story is hers alone, a narrative of healing, resilience, and the unyielding pursuit of authenticity. The morning light broke gently over the venue, a garden draped in soft pastels, where every detail had been curated to echo my soul. Today was not merely a wedding, it was the unveiling of the life I had sculpted from moments of pain and triumph. Around me, laughter and the warm murmur of heartfelt conversations intertwined with the rustle of vintage lace and the delicate clinking of glass. Leo stood by my side, his eyes reflecting the unwavering support of a partner who had always seen me when others failed to. Every table was adorned with wildflowers and handwritten notes of encouragement from friends, my chosen family, whose presence transformed the space into a living tribute of acceptance and love. This was my day, a vivid tapestry of personal symbolism where every element, from the rustic decor to the meticulously curated guest list, announced that my worth was defined by joy, authenticity, and unwavering self-respect. In the midst of the day's joyous bustle, there were delicate moments when the vibrant celebrations paused, allowing the remnants of old wounds to surface. As I floated through the garden in a silken gown that shimmered with each step, brief interludes found me alone beneath a blooming magnolia. There, in the calm embrace of nature, I caught a glimpse of the past, the echo of onlookers' indifferent smiles, the ghost of rejection that had once haunted family halls. I allowed myself that solitary reflection, feeling both the residual sting of exclusion and an empowering affirmation of my journey. In these quiet moments, the juxtaposition of the external revelry and my inner landscape was striking. A reminder that while the pain of yesteryears might occasionally whisper in the silence, it no longer dictated the rhythm of my celebration. Instead, each breath was a declaration. I move forward, whole and unburdened. As twilight draped the sky in hues of rose and gold, I stepped before my gathered family of choice, friends, mentors, and kindred spirits, and cleared my throat. The soft murmur of anticipation hushed as I began, my voice resonating with both vulnerability and strength. Today, I stand not at the center of a traditional tale, but at the heart of a truth I have reclaimed. I have felt the void of exclusion and the aching silence of withheld acceptance. But here, in this moment, I choose to celebrate love, not the love promised by blood alone, but the profound love found in genuine connection, in friends who became family, and in a spirit that refuses to be defined by rejection. I paused, my eyes sweeping across faces alight with empathy and joy. I invite each of you to celebrate with me not only this union, but the power of living authentically. Our lives are written in moments of bold defiance, in the act of loving ourselves despite the shadows of the past. Let this day be a testament that our worth is not measured by the approval of those who cannot see us, but by the love we nurture in ourselves and in each other. The gentle applause and tearful smiles of the guests affirmed that in that vulnerable declaration lay the rebirth of my spirit. It was a moment where celebration transcended romantic union, where the very act of choosing myself became an anthem of freedom and hope. The celebration had simmered down into a quiet afterglow, and with it, a storm began to brew. In the hours following the wedding, my phone erupted with a flurry of notifications. Social media posts, laden with both veiled criticisms and overt displays of disbelief, began to accumulate on my timeline. I stared at sharply worded messages and carefully curated images of our day, mingled with pointed hashtags questioning my choices. Amid the digital clamor, the phone rang once again. It was my Aunt Marlene, her tone a curious blend of concern and admonishment, as she asked, "Madison, why would you make such a choice?" On top of that were unexpected visitations, knocking at my door with hesitant faces from extended family members, each one carrying their own reservoir of regret and unresolved questions. The mosaic of reactions, both virtual and in person, painted a vivid picture. A family reeling from decades of unspoken tensions, now laid bare by my refusal to conform to old patterns. In the quiet hours of the night, I gathered the tangible remnants of this new chapter. Apology notes slipped under the door, regretful messages blinking on my phone, and emails filled with hesitant attempts at reconciliation. Each note carried the weight of unspoken words and half-healed wounds. I sat at my desk, a soft lamplight illuminating a pile of envelopes, carefully reading through messages that ranged from meager justifications to heartfelt, if belated, declarations of remorse. As I sorted through these remnants of my past, a quiet realization emerged. Estrangement is as complex as reconciliation. There was no single path to healing, only a series of cautious steps, along which every faded apology and every unsent response wove together into the tapestry of a family forever changed by years of disconnection. Later that night, slumped in solitude by the large window of my apartment, I allowed the silence to envelop me. Outside, the city hummed softly under the glow of streetlights, a reminder that life continued, unabated, despite the turmoil within. In these hushed moments, I opened a blank notebook and began scribbling impressions of what forgiveness meant to me. Would forgiving them bind me to an old cycle of disappointment, or could it free me from the past without diminishing my hard-won self-respect? The ledger in my mind balanced cost against benefit. Forgiveness, while liberating in theory, demanded an emotional price that might reopen ancient wounds. I pressed my pen to paper, not to pen a definitive answer, but to acknowledge the truth of my choice, to honor my boundaries and preserve the self-respect I'd fought so long to build. In that solitary reflection, I realized that while reconciliation might be possible someday, my current priority was to remain true to the person I had become, unburdened by the expectations of a fractured legacy. Later that evening, long after the clamor of change had quieted, I settled into my favorite nook by the window. With soft lamplight illuminating a neat journal and a pen that had witnessed my most vulnerable truths, I began to write a reflective narrative meant for my future self. My words unfolded like a gentle confession, a recapitulation of every trial, every triumph. Today, I recount not only the events that have defined my past, but also the lessons etched deep within my heart. Every moment of exclusion, every bittersweet confrontation has taught me that my worth is not measured by others' approval, but by the quiet strength with which I reclaim my space. Page after page, I poured out memories of celebratory triumphs, of defiant heartache, and of the resilience built from each rejection. This letter was a promise to myself that I would remember the pain, honor the growth, and glean wisdom from the scars. It was a declaration that my future would be guided by honesty, self-respect, and the gentle assurance that I am and will always be enough. A few days later, amidst the subtle hum of early autumn, I received an unexpected message. It was from Ethan, a tentative outreach that carried the fragile hope of reconciliation. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, where autumn's mellow light filtered through stained glass windows, casting soft hues upon our faces. As we sat across from one another, each of us delicately navigating years of silence and heartache, the conversation unfolded with measured pauses and hesitant smiles. "I've been reflecting," Ethan began slowly, his gaze earnest yet laden with unspoken questions. "I realize that I've lost so much by not truly seeing you." His words wavered between regret and a cautious optimism of change. I listened, my heart quietly absorbing the weight of his apology, a promise of effort yet to come, and a mutual curiosity about the possibility of healing. The conversation was a quiet dance of words. Every pause carried as much meaning as the softly spoken lines. Unresolved issues lingered, but there was also a mutual understanding that forgiveness, if it were to take root, would be nurtured slowly, with care and mutual respect. In the days that followed our reunion, the world seemed to exhale a gentle promise with every passing sunrise. I found myself standing outside my apartment, the crisp air of early morning filling my lungs as I stepped onto a familiar street. Yet this time, everything was imbued with a renewed sense of possibility. The echoes of the past had given way to a present where family was no longer defined solely by legacy or by blood, by understanding and intentional connection. I embraced the redefinition of these bonds, realizing that while reconciliation might remain a work in progress, my own self-worth had become a guiding light. With cautious optimism, I walked forward, a subtle smile curving my lips as I joined the flow of everyday life. Each step was a quiet celebration of liberation, a newfound freedom to honor my authentic self, to cherish friendships that flourish on genuine care, and to view every new day as an opportunity to weave new stories into the tapestry of my life. In that moment, I was not bound by the shadows of old wounds, but uplifted by the promise of fresh beginnings, a life reimagined on my very own terms. In this final chapter, the journey comes full circle. With heartfelt reflections penned for the future, a delicate bridge built between estranged souls, and the empowered step into a redefined existence, my story transforms into an ode to resilience, self-worth, and the endless possibility of new beginnings.